Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Snoozy Scientist, where we gently explore the mysteries of our world, one sleepy yawn at a time. I'm really glad you made it here tonight. Wherever you're tuning in from, whether wrapped beneath soft blankets, resting in a quiet chair, or letting your mind settle after a long day, this peaceful space has been made specially for you. Tonight, we're going to journey to real places on our planet where the laws of science seem to fail, places where survival is measured in seconds, where even the bravest explorers hesitate to go because there may be no way back. For decades, the Bermuda Triangle has been our benchmark for the unexplained. But what if I told you it isn't even the most dangerous? There are corners of this planet with higher disappearance rates, deadlier natural traps, where scientists struggle to explain the horrors lurking there. In these places, disappearances don't just happen, they're expected. These are not myths. Every place you're about to visit is real, documented, studied, and feared by those who dare to go near them. Their stories are written in death tolls, in expeditions that never returned, and in the names of men and women who set out to explore and never came back. Some of these locations you've never even heard of, and perhaps that's for the best, because once you know where they are, you'll never look at a world map the same way again. Before we continue, if you're already settling in for this quiet journey, it would mean so much if you gave this video a gentle like or subscribed if you'd like more sleepy science adventures like this one. And if you feel like sharing, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it there? It's always a joy to see how far across the world our little corner of curiosity reaches. So now, take a slow breath, let your shoulders soften, and let's begin. Far out in the Pacific, off the coast of Japan, there's a stretch of water that even the most seasoned sailors approach with caution. The locals call it Mano Umi, meaning the Sea of the Devil, but to the wider world, it's known as the Dragon's Triangle. On maps, it doesn't look particularly threatening. It's just another patch of ocean sitting quietly between Japan, the Philippines, and the northern Mariana Islands. Yet its reputation is anything but quiet. Over the years, it has become infamous as a place where ships, submarines, and even aircraft simply vanish sometimes in clear daylight, without so much as a distress call. For generations, fishermen in the region have told stories about boats that left port under blue skies and never returned. In these tales, the sea isn't just unpredictable, it's alive, shifting beneath the hull like something that resents being crossed. These aren't just superstitions whispered at harbors. There are official records of naval vessels that disappeared entirely, leaving only an empty expanse of water where moments earlier human voices had echoed. And perhaps most unsettling of all, some of these vanishings happened in calm weather, ruling out the violent typhoons that are common in other parts of the Pacific. Beneath the waves, the Dragon's Triangle hides a dangerous, restless world. The ocean floor here is not flat or peaceful. It's a jagged, shifting landscape shaped by volcanic forces that haven't gone dormant. In some places, undersea volcanoes erupt without warning, sending boiling clouds of gas racing to the surface. If a ship happens to be above one of these sudden bursts, the water can turn into a deadly mix of bubbles and heat. The change in density robs a vessel of buoyancy, pulling it downward as if the ocean itself has opened a trapdoor. Survivors are rare because the events are so sudden, and the evidence, if any, sinks quickly into the depths. But the danger isn't just geological. Compasses and navigational instruments have been known to spin wildly here, as though some invisible force is twisting the very lines of the Earth's magnetic field. Pilots have reported their aircraft drifting off course despite perfect weather. Submarine crews have spoken of systems flickering and dying without cause, forcing emergency surfacing maneuvers in the middle of nowhere. And because the Dragon's Triangle covers such a vast and remote stretch of ocean, a single navigational error can put a ship or aircraft hundreds of miles away from its intended path, deep into waters where rescue is almost impossible. The seafloor's shifting nature has also created jagged underwater mountains and deep trenches that swallow wreckage whole. Even modern technology struggles to map the area in detail. Sonar scans reveal ghostly shapes that disappear upon a second pass, as if the terrain itself is changing between readings. It's a landscape that doesn't want to be known, hiding whatever secrets it holds in dark valleys no diver has reached. During the mid-20th century, the disappearances became so frequent that Japan's government launched an official investigation. Between the late 1940s and early 1950s, several ships, including large fishing vessels, went missing in rapid succession. In one particularly haunting incident, a Japanese naval vessel sent to survey the region was lost with its entire crew. The tragedy sent ripples of fear across the country, and in response, the Japanese government declared the area a danger zone. Ships were advised to avoid it entirely, a rare official acknowledgement that something in those waters defied explanation. Yet, despite the warnings, the Dragon's Triangle continues to draw the curious explorers, scientists, and thrill seekers who want to see if the legends are real. Some hope to find wreckage or physical evidence to explain the vanishings. Others, driven by more romantic notions, dream of uncovering proof of something extraordinary, a hidden force of nature, or perhaps something beyond nature altogether. But those who enter often return with more questions than answers. The ocean here doesn't rage constantly. In fact, on the surface, it can look almost serene. This calm is perhaps its most unsettling quality. There are no towering waves to warn you away, no ominous clouds gathering on the horizon. The danger is quieter, hidden beneath the still water. In some cases, ships that disappeared in the triangle were last seen under bright skies, their crews likely believing they were in no immediate danger. And then, nothing. No wreckage washing up on shore. No emergency beacons. Just a silence that spreads across the water like a curtain falling on a stage. In recent years, satellite imaging and deep-sea drones have offered a clearer picture of what lies beneath, but they have not erased the mystery. The volcanic landscape still simmers, the magnetic anomalies still confuse, and the tally of unexplained vanishings still grows. Even the most advanced equipment can fail here, forcing researchers to retreat before they become part of the triangle's grim statistics. This stretch of ocean remains, in many ways, untamed. It is a reminder that for all our progress in navigation, technology, and oceanography, there are still places on this planet where human presence feels tentative, fragile, even sailors still whisper about the Dragon's Triangle with the same mixture of fear and respect that their ancestors held for it. Out there, far from shore, the ocean does not need storms or icebergs to claim a vessel. It can do so with silence, invisibility, and precision. From the restless volcanic seabed of the Dragon's Triangle, the journey takes us far from salt water and shifting tides to a place where the danger hides not beneath the waves, but in the quiet forests of rural America. In the shadowed hills of Vermont, another triangle has earned its own dark reputation, where people vanish into the wilderness without a sound and without a trace. In the Green Mountains of Vermont, there is a stretch of wilderness that locals whisper about, a swath of forested ridges, deep ravines, and rushing streams that, between the mid-1940s and 1950s, became the center of one of the most puzzling clusters of disappearances in American history. It is an area later dubbed the Bennington Triangle, a name that hints at mystery, but the landscape itself is as real and tangible as the soil underfoot. It is remote but not unreachable, beautiful but often unforgiving, and its history draws the attention of both storytellers and scientists alike. From 1945 to 1950, at least 5 people vanished here without a trace. The missing were not all alike. They were hunters, hikers, and, in one heartbreaking case, a young boy of only 8 years old. Each disappearance occurred under different circumstances, yet they shared an unsettling outcome. Despite extensive searches, no bodies were ever recovered, and no definitive clues were found to explain what had happened. The first widely recorded case was that of a man named Mitty Rivers, a skilled local hunting guide. He knew the woods better than most, but in late November 1945, while leading a group back toward camp, he walked ahead on the trail and was never seen again. Search teams scoured the area for weeks, combing riverbanks, ravines, and thickets. The only sign of him was a single spent rifle cartridge. No tracks, no clothing, no indication of injury. Almost exactly 1 year later, a college student named Paula Weldon set out for a hike on the long trail which passes through the region. She was lightly dressed for the cold December weather, but she had walked these paths before. Witnesses saw her heading up the trail, and a few hours later, she was simply gone. The search for Paula became one of the largest in Vermont's history, involving state police, local volunteers, and even aircraft. The terrain was mapped in grids, every path and clearing checked, but it was as if she had stepped out of the world entirely. The pattern continued. In 1949, a veteran named James Tedford boarded a bus bound for Bennington. Witnesses saw him sitting in his seat during the trip, but when the bus arrived at its destination, he was gone. His belongings were still on the luggage rack, and his timetable lay open on the seat. While this disappearance happened in transit rather than in the forest, it deepened the growing sense that something inexplicable was tied to the region. Then came the case that most shook the nearby communities, the disappearance of 8-year-old Paul Jepson in October 1950. The boy had been left in his family's truck while his mother tended to farm animals nearby. When she returned, Paul was gone. Search dogs followed his scent to a nearby road, and then it ended abruptly, as if he had been lifted into the air. Once again, no trace was ever found. From a scientific perspective, several natural factors could help explain why these disappearances remain unsolved. The region's topography is rugged, with steep slopes, sudden drop-offs, and dense forest cover that can easily conceal a person from view. In the colder months, hypothermia becomes a real threat, and disorientation can set in quickly. A person lost in these woods could succumb to the elements in hours, and in this environment, decomposition and scavenger activity can remove evidence rapidly. There's also the matter of weather. The Bennington area can experience sudden and severe changes in conditions. A clear day can turn into fog or snowfall with little warning, reducing visibility to only a few meters. In such moments, even the most experienced outdoorsmen can lose bearings, and search parties may struggle to locate anyone in time. Another possibility lies in the geology of the region. The Green Mountains are home to numerous hidden caves, sinkholes, and abandoned mine shafts from earlier centuries. These features can be obscured by vegetation or snow, and falling into one could leave a person completely hidden from rescuers, even if they passed only meters away. Despite these plausible scientific explanations, The sheer lack of physical evidence in all these cases is what keeps the Bennington Triangle in the public imagination. Forensic science has advanced since the 1950s, but in the wilderness, time is the enemy once hours turn to days and days to weeks. The probability of recovery drops sharply. Without remains or artifacts, investigators are left with only witness statements and the landscape itself, which offers no answers. The mystery of these vanishings and the environment that swallows people so completely has parallels with other remote places across the world where nature's beauty hides its dangers. Some of those places lie even farther north, where isolation, extreme terrain, and eerie local legends converge in ways just as unsettling. Far in the northern wilderness of Canada lies a place few outsiders ever visit, a remote body of water called Lake Anjikuni. It sits in the Kivalliq region of Nunavut, surrounded by endless stretches of tundra and boreal forest. In the winter, the land is locked in ice and darkness for months at a time. In the summer, it is alive with insects, migratory birds, and the hum of water flowing from the surrounding rivers. The environment is extreme, yet for thousands of years, Inuit communities have thrived here, adapting to the land's rhythm in ways modern science is still trying to fully understand. The story that put Lake Anjikuni on the map begins in November of 1930 when a Canadian fur trapper named Joe LaBelle made his way toward a small Inuit settlement on the lake's shore. LaBelle was familiar with the area. These were people he had traded with before, and the village was a known waypoint in the frozen wilderness. But as he approached, something felt wrong. There were no voices, no barking dogs, no smell of cooking fires. The snow lay undisturbed. According to LaBelle's account, what he found defied explanation. The village was empty, not damaged, not burned, simply abandoned. Food stores were full. Rifles were propped neatly against the walls of homes. Cooking pots sat ready over cold hearths, as if a meal had been paused mid-preparation. Even the sled dogs were still there, but they had perished, tied to their posts, with no sign they had been fed or released. What puzzled investigators at the time was not just the absence of people, but the absence of struggle. There were no footprints leading away, no scattered belongings suggesting a hasty escape. In winter, even a single person walking through the snow leaves a record that can last for days. Here, there was nothing but the wind-blown drifts. From a modern scientific perspective, this lack of tracks is one of the details that invites deeper questions. Could a sudden blizzard have erased them? Meteorological records from the period are incomplete, but the region is known for extreme weather. Whiteouts can descend in minutes, disorienting even the most experienced hunters. Yet that still leaves the mystery of why the entire community, men, women, children, would have left at the same time and without taking vital supplies. Some have suggested environmental hazards unique to the Arctic could have played a role. Sudden thinning of lake ice, for example, can occur when subglacial springs release warmer water, creating invisible danger zones. Inuit hunters are skilled at reading the ice, but in rare cases, unusual thawing patterns can appear overnight. Could something like this have forced the group to move quickly toward safety? Others point to the possibility of poisoning. Inuit diets in the winter rely heavily on preserved meat and fish. If a food source became contaminated, for example, by botulism or from improper fermentation, the symptoms could be severe and fast-acting. Illness might have driven the survivors to seek help from another camp, leaving behind what they couldn't carry. But this theory faces the same problem. Why were there no tracks? Lake Anjikuni is also in a region that experiences unusual geomagnetic activity. Scientists know that the Earth's magnetic field is not uniform. Certain areas, especially in the far north, have strong anomalies that can affect navigation. While these distortions are better known for interfering with compasses and radio signals, some researchers have wondered whether subtle physiological effects might also occur, potentially influencing human perception or decision making. No definitive link has been proven, but it is a reminder that the Arctic environment still holds variables we do not fully understand. The original reports of the disappearance sparked interest from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but the official investigation found no conclusive evidence of foul play. In later decades, some historians questioned whether the event was exaggerated in retellings, noting that newspaper accounts from the time sometimes embellished frontier stories to capture public imagination. Still, even with skepticism, the mystery persists because no confirmed explanation has replaced the original tale. For scientists studying remote communities, the story, whether entirely accurate or partly mythologized, highlights how fragile life can be in extreme environments. In places like Lake Anjikuni, survival depends on tight-knit cooperation, precise knowledge of the land, and the ability to adapt to rapid changes in weather, wildlife, and resources. A single event, be it environmental, biological, or social, can ripple through an entire group with devastating speed. And Lake Anjikuni is not alone in its reputation. Across the Arctic, there are other accounts, some documented, others preserved only in oral tradition, of camps found empty, tools abandoned, and fires left to burn out. Whether these vanishings are the result of environmental hazards, human conflict, or something stranger, they remind us that the wilderness still holds places where people can simply disappear. It is this very combination of unforgiving terrain and unexplained human absence that makes certain regions in the north so feared, and that same unease stretches far beyond Canada's borders, into landscapes even wilder and more dangerous. In Alaska, there is a stretch of land and sea so vast and so unforgiving that locals speak its name with quiet respect, the Alaska Triangle. It's a region that spans from the capital city of Juneau in the southeast, up through Anchorage in the center, and far north to the icy reaches of Barrow. Inside these boundaries, thousands of people vanish every single year. Pilots, hikers, fishermen, even entire small planes here one moment, gone the next, as though swallowed by the land itself. Flying over this region can feel like crossing into another world. From above, the landscape is breathtaking, a patchwork of jagged mountain ranges, deep valleys carved by ancient glaciers, and wide rivers winding like silver ribbons through untouched wilderness. But beauty here is deceptive. This is one of the most remote and least forgiving places on Earth, where rescue crews often find themselves racing the clock, not just against the distance, but against the weather. One of the most unsettling factors in the Alaska Triangle is the strange way compasses and navigation instruments can misbehave. Pilots have reported that magnetic readings in certain pockets of the region shift unexpectedly, pulling needles away from true north. For an experienced aviator, this is more than just inconvenient. It's dangerous. Even a slight error in heading can carry a small aircraft into cloud banks where jagged peaks hide in the mist, or lead them off course into areas with no safe landing zones for hundreds of miles. The terrain below offers no mercy. Between Juneau and Anchorage, mountain chains rise like walls, and narrow passes twist in sudden turns that are easy to miss in poor visibility. To the north, in the approach to Barrow, the land flattens into endless tundra and sea ice, beautiful but featureless, making it almost impossible to navigate without instruments. In winter, whiteout conditions can erase the horizon entirely, leaving sky and ground blending into one pale void. Then there's the weather. It doesn't just change quickly here, it transforms in a way that feels almost alive. A calm, sunny afternoon can shift into a blizzard within minutes, swallowing up trails, obscuring landmarks, and grounding helicopters that might have been on their way to help. Winds funnel through mountain passes with hurricane strength, while sudden downdrafts can force planes straight toward the ground. Even seasoned bush pilots admit that flying in the Alaska Triangle is unlike anywhere else. It's a place where confidence can turn into panic in the blink of an eye. And hidden beneath this icy, rugged surface are dangers just as lethal. Many of Alaska's glaciers hide deep crevasses, narrow cracks that plunge hundreds of feet down. From the air, these might look like harmless lines in the ice, but on foot, they're traps waiting for an unwary step. A single snowstorm can cover their openings, leaving a flat, white sheet where moments before there was a drop into darkness. Even experienced mountaineers have been lost this way, their bodies unrecoverable beneath shifting ice. The scale of disappearances here is staggering. While some cases can be explained crashes caused by storms, hikers caught unprepared for the cold, many others leave no wreckage, no trail, and no answers. Search teams often return with nothing to show for their efforts but frostbite and exhaustion. The wilderness is so vast that an entire aircraft could vanish, and decades later, not a single piece of it would be found. In this part of the world, there's a saying that Alaska doesn't give up its dead. It's a place where the land holds its secrets tightly, where every shadowed valley and cloud-covered peak might be the last sight someone ever sees. And as the Triangle's stories travel southward, they begin to echo in other corners of the world, places just as wild, just as strange, where vanishings follow their own unsettling patterns. In the far northwest of Canada, tucked within the Mackenzie Mountains of the Northwest Territories, lies a place that even seasoned wilderness travelers approach with caution. It is called the Nahanni Valley, a land of sheer cliffs, roaring rivers, and mist-shrouded canyons. On a map, it looks remote. In person, it feels like another world entirely. The air here is sharp and clean, but it carries a weight of silence that seems older than memory. To the Dene people, whose ancestors have lived in this region for countless generations, the valley is more than just dangerous. It is a place bound by deep spiritual warning. They have long called it a cursed land, and for good reason. In the early 20th century, stories began to spread beyond the local communities. Prospectors, drawn by whispers of gold hidden in the valley's riverbanks, set out on expeditions. Some returned with tales of hardship and cold. Others did not return at all. In 1908, two brothers named Willie and Frank McLeod ventured into the valley, equipped for a long stay and intent on striking it rich. They were never seen alive again. Months later, searchers found their camp supplies undisturbed, gold still lying where they had panned it, and the brothers' bodies lying side by side. Both were missing their heads. The details were strange enough to unsettle even experienced lawmen. There were no signs of animal attack, no evidence of robbery, and no clear clue as to what had happened. Just two bodies, intact from the shoulders down, in one of the most inaccessible valleys in North America. Over the years, similar cases emerged. In 1914, another prospector named Martin Jorgensen vanished. His cabin was later found burned to the ground, his body among the ashes, head gone, gold untouched. A few years later, yet another headless corpse was discovered near the valley, belonging to an unidentified miner. Each time, the pattern repeated: wealth in gold left behind, no sign of a fight, and no explanation. From a scientific standpoint, the Nahanni Valley's isolation makes any investigation challenging. The area is cut by the South Nahanni River, which twists through deep canyons carved over millions of years. Steep rock walls rise hundreds of meters, and dense boreal forest covers much of the landscape. In summer, swarms of insects make travel miserable. In winter, temperatures can drop far below freezing, and snow hides the treacherous ground. Simply reaching the sites of these disappearances can take days of travel by river or air, and in earlier decades, it could take weeks. Geologically, the valley is rich in minerals, and its active tectonic history has created an uneven terrain with fissures, sinkholes, and unstable cliffs. These features can be deadly to the unwary. One step on a frost-loosened rock, and a person could fall into a crevice deep enough that no searcher would ever find them. Predators, too, roam the area: grizzly bears, wolves, and even wolverines, though none would selectively take a head and leave gold untouched. The Dene warnings about the valley may, in part, stem from an understanding of how dangerous this terrain is. For generations, they avoided certain areas, passing down stories about spirits or curses that kept people away. In scientific terms, such oral traditions often act as survival maps, ways to keep communities safe from landslides, floods, or other hidden hazards. But in the case of the Nahanni Valley, the number of unexplained deaths has given these warnings an extra edge of fear. The mysteries here have never been fully solved. Environmental hazards could explain some disappearances. Sudden weather shifts, hypothermia, or accidents far from help. In the frigid water of the Nahanni River, decomposition slows, scavenger access is limited, and remains might be carried far downstream. Yet the repeated detail of the missing heads and the untouched gold remains unusual in forensic terms. Without skulls, determining cause of death becomes far more difficult, erasing critical clues that might otherwise solve the case. The Nahanni Valley is now part of a national park reserve, visited by a small number of adventurers each year. Scientists study its geology, its unique ecosystems, and its role as a refuge for wildlife. But those who come here also step into a landscape heavy with unanswered questions, questions that, like in so many other remote corners of the world, remain buried under layers of wilderness and time. Beyond this valley, further north and west, there are other landscapes where nature's beauty conceals its most lethal side, waiting for the unwary who dare to enter. In the north of Tanzania, close to the border with Kenya, there is a lake that looks like it belongs on another planet. From above, it appears in strange shades of crimson and orange, sometimes even a deep, almost purple hue. This is Lake Natron, a shallow body of water that, despite its beauty, is one of the most extreme and inhospitable environments on Earth. To those who live near it, the lake is both a source of life and a place of quiet fear, for it has an eerie ability to preserve death. The surface of Lake Natron often mirrors the burning African sky, but it hides a chemistry unlike that of most lakes. The water is highly alkaline, with a pH that can climb to levels similar to ammonia or household bleach. This alkalinity comes from sodium carbonate and other minerals that wash into the lake from the surrounding volcanic hills. Over time, these minerals concentrate because Lake Natron has no outlet. Water only leaves through evaporation. In the hot climate, that evaporation happens quickly, leaving behind briny, mineral-rich shallows. The result is water so caustic that it can burn the skin and eyes of most animals that enter it. But the most striking effect of this chemistry is what happens when animals die in the lake. Birds and bats that misjudge the surface or are overcome by exhaustion can land in the water and perish. Instead of decomposing quickly as they would in a typical lake, their bodies are transformed. The minerals seep into their skin and feathers, hardening them. Over days or weeks, the animal becomes calcified, a natural mummification that freezes it in lifelike detail. Even delicate features like the curve of a wing or the expression in the eyes can remain intact. These stone animals are sometimes washed ashore, looking as though they had been turned into sculptures by some mythical force. The preservation process is similar to what happens in certain fossil beds, but here it occurs in real time, in the open air. The combination of heat, salt, and high pH creates an environment hostile to bacteria and scavengers, slowing decay and allowing minerals to replace the animal's tissues before they break down. For scientists, this makes Lake Natron an unusual natural laboratory for studying chemical preservation, the kind of process that, over millions of years, can lead to fossilization. Despite its deadly reputation for many species, the lake is not devoid of life. In fact, it is a crucial breeding ground for one of the most striking birds in the world, the lesser flamingo. These birds thrive here because they feed on cyanobacteria and small algae that bloom in the alkaline waters. The harsh conditions keep most predators away, giving the flamingo's chicks a better chance to survive. At the peak of breeding season, hundreds of thousands of flamingos can gather at Lake Natron, their pink feathers standing out against the blood-red water. From space, the lake's strange colors and the pale outlines of these massive bird colonies are visible as a distinct patch on the East African landscape. The red color itself comes from microscopic life, Haloarchaea salt-loving microorganisms, and certain species of cyanobacteria produce pigments that tint the water. The deeper the concentration of these organisms, the richer and more alien the lake's colors become. This interplay of biology and chemistry has made Lake Natron a focus for both ecological and planetary scientists, who study it as an Earth-based model for what life might look like on other worlds. The surrounding environment is just as extreme as the water. The lake sits in the shadow of Old Doinyo Lengai, an active volcano whose eruptions add fresh mineral deposits to the region. Temperatures around the lake can rise above 40 degrees Celsius, and the combination of heat, mineral dust, and shimmering mirages can disorient even experienced travelers. It is easy to imagine how, in the glare of the midday sun, a bird might misread the lake's glassy surface as a safe landing spot, only to be trapped in a chemical trap it cannot escape. Beyond Lake Natron's shimmering edge, the East African Rift stretches across the land, a geologically active zone that is slowly tearing the continent apart. Here, the ground itself is in motion, shaping lakes, volcanoes, and valleys. This restless geology feeds into the lake's chemistry, ensuring it remains one of the most unique and unforgiving places on the planet. And while Lake Natron holds its silent stone figures along its shores, further east lies another landscape shaped by nature into a place both breathtaking and perilous, where survival depends not only on strength, but on understanding the dangers hidden in its beauty. At the northwestern base of Mount Fuji lies a forest so dense that daylight seems to dissolve into green shadows. The air here is still and heavy, muffled by a thick canopy of twisted trees and tangled undergrowth. This is Aokigahara, known in Japan as Jukai, the Sea of Trees. To those who walk its winding paths, the forest feels endless, its quiet broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the creak of an old trunk swaying in the wind. Beneath the beauty, however, it carries a reputation both haunting and scientifically intriguing. The forest floor is uneven and rough, made of hardened lava from Mount Fuji's eruption centuries ago. This volcanic rock has shaped the landscape into a labyrinth of ridges, deep crevices, and hidden caves. Roots snake across the ground, gripping the rock like skeletal fingers. The lava's mineral composition gives the soil a unique character, rich in certain elements, but thin and dry in others, creating a challenging environment for plants to thrive. Yet, moss and ferns flourish here, adding to the thick, layered texture of the forest. Walking into Aokigahara, it's easy to lose all sense of direction. The trees grow close together, blocking much of the sunlight and dampening sound. There are no sweeping vistas or distant landmarks to orient yourself. The forest swallows light and muffles noise, creating an unsettling sense that the world beyond has faded away. Trails snake into the shadows, sometimes looping back on themselves, sometimes splitting into narrow footpaths that vanish between the trees. In certain places, the ground drops away into sudden hollows, invisible until you are nearly upon them. Even the most experienced hikers can struggle to navigate here, not just because of the lack of visible landmarks, but because of something stranger. Compasses, which in most forests provide steady guidance, sometimes spin erratically in Aokigahara. The volcanic bedrock is rich in iron and other magnetic minerals that can interfere with a compass needle, pulling it off true north or sending it drifting in slow, deceptive arcs. For centuries, this quirk of geology has confused travelers and fueled the forest's reputation as a place where navigation is unreliable. Local legends add to the air of mystery. Long before the modern world took note of Aokigahara, stories were told of spirits wandering its depths and of people disappearing without trace. Folklore often described the forest as cursed, a place where those who entered with troubled hearts might never find their way back. In more recent decades, its name became tied to Japan's high suicide rates. The quiet isolation, combined with its cultural associations, has drawn people seeking to vanish from the world. This reputation has led authorities to place signs along certain trails, urging visitors to reconsider and think of their loved ones before proceeding. From a scientific perspective, the forest's unusual navigational challenges and psychological effects are as fascinating as they are sobering. The density of the vegetation plays a role in disorientation. When all directions look the same, the human brain struggles to maintain an internal map. Without clear visual markers, people rely more heavily on their inner sense of direction, which is easily confused by repetitive patterns in the environment. The muffled acoustics add to this effect, making it harder to judge distance or location by sound. Even the color palette, an unbroken tapestry of greens and browns, can make it difficult for the eye to pick out reference points. Yet, Aokigahara is not just a place of human tragedy. It is also a living example of ecological adaptation. Certain plants here have evolved to survive in nutrient-poor volcanic soils. Fungi weave through the ground, breaking down organic matter and helping roots absorb scarce minerals. The caves and crevices formed by ancient lava flows provide shelter for bats and other small creatures. In spring, the forest floor bursts with delicate flowers that bloom in the filtered light, while in winter, a thin frost settles on the moss-covered rocks, giving the forest a silvery glow. The forest's position at the foot of Mount Fuji means it is also shaped by the mountain's weather patterns. Cold air slides down the slopes at night, pooling among the trees and creating pockets of mist. Rain collects in the hollows of the lava rock, forming tiny pools that glisten in the dim light. The scent of damp earth lingers year-round, carrying the faint mineral tang of the volcano itself. From the air, Aokigahara is an emerald mass spreading across the base of the mountain, a stark contrast to the open plains and villages that surround it. But within its depths, space collapses into narrow corridors of green, and time seems to slow, each step drawing you further into a place where the outside world feels impossibly far away. And just beyond its whispering leaves, the land shifts once more into a landscape equally capable of stirring awe and unease, a place where the ground itself rises into flat-topped cliffs that pierce the clouds. Mount Roraima rises like a fortress at the meeting point of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, its sheer cliffs shooting straight up from the surrounding rainforest before flattening into a vast plateau. From a distance, it looks like the summit of a mountain was sliced clean off, leaving a table of stone suspended high in the clouds. The vertical walls, some more than 400 meters high, are so steep that waterfalls spill from the top in long, thin ribbons, vanishing into mist before they ever touch the ground below. This striking shape is the result of geology on a time scale almost beyond comprehension. Mount Roraima is part of the Guiana Shield, one of the oldest rock formations on Earth, with sandstone that dates back nearly 2 billion years. Over eons, the softer surrounding rock eroded away, leaving behind the harder plateau. Its isolation has been so complete that the ecosystem at the top has followed its own evolutionary path, separate from the world below. The plateau itself is a world apart, flat, but fractured into ridges, pools, and strange rock formations sculpted by wind and rain. Some of these shapes resemble giant mushrooms, others like twisted sculptures that seem the work of an artist rather than erosion. Shallow rivers wind across the surface, sometimes disappearing into sinkholes that drop deep into the stone. Small lakes reflect the shifting sky, and pockets of boggy wetlands are fed by the constant drizzle and cloud cover that shrouds the summit. Because of its isolation, Mount Roraima is home to species that exist nowhere else on the planet. Botanists have discovered rare carnivorous plants that trap and digest insects, mosses that glow faintly in the damp twilight, and delicate orchids adapted to the plateau's thin, nutrient-poor soils. The animals are just as unique: tiny frogs no bigger than a fingernail, flightless beetles, and birds whose calls echo strangely in the rocky corridors. Many of these species have evolved in complete isolation for millions of years, their survival tied entirely to the peculiar environment of the plateau. The weather here plays a central role in shaping life. Clouds frequently sweep over the top, blanketing the plateau in a fine mist that provides constant moisture. Rainstorms can come without warning, transforming quiet pools into rushing streams that spill over the cliff edges. At night, temperatures drop sharply, and the summit can feel as cold as a high-altitude mountain pass despite lying in the tropics. For centuries, Mount Roraima has been surrounded by legend. The indigenous Pemon and Capon peoples regard it as a sacred place, calling it the House of the Gods. In their stories, it is the stump of a mighty tree that once held all the fruits and crops of the world before it was cut down, scattering abundance across the land. The plateau's cloud cover and dramatic appearance have also inspired tales of otherworldly lights flickering above its surface. These mysterious glows, sometimes reported by explorers and climbers, may be linked to atmospheric phenomena such as ball lightning or reflections caused by the dense mist, but to those who witness them, they can seem unearthly. European explorers first documented Mount Roraima in the late 19th century, and their reports captured the imagination of writers and scientists alike. The steep cliffs meant that for most of history, the plateau remained unreachable, its secrets locked away. Only in modern times, with climbing equipment and guided expeditions, has it been possible to reach the summit. Even then, the climb is difficult, involving multi-day treks through humid jungle, river crossings, and steep ascents along narrow ledges where waterfalls tumble past in continuous sheets. Those who have stood on the summit describe it as stepping onto another planet. The combination of unique life, alien-looking stone landscapes, and ever-shifting fog creates a setting unlike anywhere else on Earth. The sense of isolation is profound. The rim of the plateau forms a natural wall, and beyond it, the view drops into a seemingly endless expanse of forest, rivers, and distant hills. In the quiet, broken only by wind and water, it's easy to understand why Mount Roraima has been called a lost world, and why just beyond its slopes, the Earth's landscapes continue to transform into some of the most inhospitable places known to science. Along the remote Atlantic coastline of Namibia lies a stretch of land that seems almost otherworldly, a place where the desert meets the sea in a collision of extremes. This is the Skeleton Coast, a narrow, wind-swept strip of sand and dunes that extends for hundreds of kilometers. From above, it appears as a pale ribbon pressed between the vast, restless ocean and the barren heart of the Namib Desert. But what truly defines it is the haunting evidence of lives and journeys cut short, the scattered remains of shipwrecks, the sun-bleached bones of whales, and the skeletal frames of seals lying along the shoreline. The coast earned its name for more than one reason. The whale and seal bones are reminders of Namibia's past whaling industry and the rich marine life that still inhabits its waters. But the skeletons also include the rusting hulks of ships, left stranded and broken by the powerful Benguela current. This cold ocean current sweeps northward along the coast, bringing dense fog and turbulent waves that can push vessels dangerously close to shore. Once trapped in the surf, even the strongest ship would be torn apart by the pounding waves, its remains dragged inland by shifting sand over the years. The fog that rolls in from the ocean almost daily is one of the Skeleton Coast's most defining features. At times, it's so thick that it erases the horizon, blending sea and land into one indistinct, ghostly world. This fog is born when the cold Benguela current meets the warm air from the desert, creating a layer of moisture that creeps inland. It may bring a little relief from the heat for some creatures, but for sailors navigating without modern equipment, it has long been a deadly hazard. Unable to see the shoreline until it's too late, many vessels throughout history have run aground here, their crews stepping off into one of the harshest environments on Earth. Survival on the Skeleton Coast is almost impossible without preparation. Fresh water is virtually non-existent, and the inland desert offers no reliable shelter or food. The sun beats down during the day, with temperatures soaring, and at night, the cold ocean air can chill to the bone. In the past, shipwreck survivors often found themselves trapped between the deadly sea and an even deadlier desert. The few who tried to walk to safety were confronted with shifting dunes, jagged rocks, and weeks of unforgiving dryness. Historical accounts tell of expeditions sent to rescue stranded sailors, only to find their bodies days or weeks later, often within sight of the rusting remains of the ships they had abandoned. Despite these conditions, the Skeleton Coast is not devoid of life. The fog, while treacherous for humans, sustains a surprising array of animals and plants adapted to extreme scarcity. Certain desert beetles have evolved to collect water from the fog itself, tilting their bodies to let droplets run down into their mouths. Coastal dunes support grasses whose roots trap moisture deep below the surface. Seals gather in vast colonies along the shore, feeding on fish brought by the nutrient-rich current, while brown hyenas patrol the beaches, scavenging from carcasses washed ashore. Even elephants have been known to venture into the area, following ancient migration routes to find sparse vegetation in the riverbeds that cut through the desert toward the sea. The human relationship with this coast has always been shaped by its danger and its mystery. Indigenous Himba communities have long lived inland from the Skeleton Coast, navigating its challenges with knowledge passed down through generations. In modern times, the area has been designated as part of Namibia's Skeleton Coast National Park, a place of stark beauty where the rusting remains of ships serve as both historical markers and silent warnings. From the deck of a ship approaching through the Atlantic fog, or from the crest of a dune looking out to the endless horizon, the Skeleton Coast feels like a threshold between two worlds, the shifting desert and the restless sea. And just beyond its borders, other landscapes wait where Earth's extremes shape life and death in equally astonishing ways. Far out in the western Pacific Ocean lies a scar in the seafloor so deep that if Mount Everest were placed inside it, the mountain's peak would still be more than a mile underwater. This is the Mariana Trench, the deepest known point in Earth's oceans, reaching nearly 7 miles down into a realm where sunlight has never touched. From the surface, the ocean above it appears calm, just another stretch of blue water. But beneath, the seafloor drops away into an abyss so vast that it feels less like part of our planet and more like an alien world. The trench is shaped by the slow, unstoppable movements of Earth's tectonic plates. Here, the massive Pacific Plate is pushed beneath the smaller Mariana Plate in a process called subduction. Over millions of years, this has carved a long, crescent-shaped trench into the seafloor, stretching for more than 1,000 miles. The deepest part is known as Challenger Deep, first measured in detail during the 20th century and revisited by a handful of crude submersibles in the decades since. At these depths, the environment is unlike anywhere else on Earth. The pressure is staggering, more than 1,000 times what we feel at sea level. To put it in perspective, a steel ball would begin to deform under the crushing force long before reaching the bottom. Any human without protection would be flattened instantly. Temperatures hover just above freezing, and there is no light, only endless darkness broken by the occasional flicker of bioluminescence from creatures that have adapted to survive here. Some of these deep-sea organisms are among the strangest life forms ever recorded. Instead of relying on sunlight for energy, many thrive through chemosynthesis, using chemical reactions around hydrothermal vents and seafloor seeps to produce food. Amphipods, ghostly white and transparent, scavenge in the darkness. Snailfish, delicate and soft-bodied, drift between rocky slopes at depths that would crush most other animals. These creatures have evolved special proteins and flexible cell structures that allow them to withstand the extreme pressure. But it is not just biology that has fascinated scientists here. The trench has also been a source of mysterious sounds picked up by underwater microphones. Some are caused by natural events like underwater landslides or the grinding of tectonic plates, but others remain unexplained. One famous example is the bloop, a powerful, low-frequency sound detected in the late 1990s that some initially thought could be from an unknown giant creature. Later studies suggested it was most likely the sound of ice breaking apart in Antarctica, but it sparked a wave of curiosity about what else might lurk in the deepest parts of the ocean. Exploring the Mariana Trench is one of the most difficult challenges in modern science. Only a handful of crewed missions have ever reached the bottom, including the historic 1960 dive by Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in the bathyscaphe Trieste, and filmmaker James Cameron's solo descent in 2012. Today, most exploration is done with remotely operated vehicles and autonomous submersibles equipped with cameras, robotic arms, and sensors that can withstand the pressure. Even so, the trench remains largely unmapped and mysterious, with vast areas no human or machine has yet seen. What makes the trench scientifically important is that it represents one of Earth's most extreme habitats, a place that pushes life to its limits and forces us to rethink what is possible. Studying it could help us understand how life might exist in similar conditions on other worlds, like the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus. The microorganisms found here might even hold clues to new medicines or biochemical processes. And while it might seem far removed from our everyday lives, the trench is connected to the greater health of our planet. Deep currents flow through it, circulating nutrients and carbon. Plastic waste, chemicals, and even radioactive materials have been found in its depths, proving that no place on Earth, no matter how remote, is untouched by human activity. The Mariana Trench is both a frontier of discovery and a reminder of how deeply our actions can reach. From here, the journey continues to places where Earth's extremes are not hidden beneath the ocean, but burn and boil in plain sight, shaping the land in ways that seem equally alien. In the far northeastern corner of Ethiopia lies a landscape so harsh, so surreal, that even from space it looks like a wound in the Earth's skin. This is the Danakil Depression, a place where the land sinks hundreds of feet below sea level, where the air can shimmer with heat well above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and where the air itself can burn your lungs. Here, the ground is alive with color. Deep yellows, vivid greens, and rust reds swirl across the surface like the palette of a fever dream. But these colors are not the work of plants or human hands. They are born of minerals, heat, and toxic chemistry. The Danakil Depression sits at the meeting point of three massive tectonic plates: the African Plate, the Arabian Plate, and the Somali Plate. Slowly, year by year, these plates pull away from each other, stretching the crust and opening rifts in the earth. In most places, this process happens quietly over millions of years beneath the oceans. But here, it is exposed on dry land, a raw, active wound where magma simmers just beneath the surface. This unique geological setting is what gives the region its extraordinary character. The intense heat is not just from the sun, though the sun here is relentless, baking the ground from dawn to dusk. Beneath the surface, molten rock pushes upward, heating underground water into steam. When that steam rises, it brings with it dissolved minerals from deep below, which then crystallize into alien-like formations. Salt crusts form fragile terraces. Iron oxides paint the ground red. Sulfur deposits blaze bright yellow against the white salt flats. Pools of acidic water, some as corrosive as car battery acid, shimmer green or turquoise under the desert light. These pools are often so hot and toxic that a single drop on skin can cause severe burns. Life here is almost unimaginable, yet it exists. Microbes have adapted to survive in conditions once thought to be uninhabitable. They thrive in acid, in high salinity, and in temperatures near boiling. Studying these extremophiles not only reveals the limits of life on Earth, it also offers clues about where life might survive elsewhere in the universe. Worlds like Mars or the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn may have once had, or still have, environments similar to these. For scientists, the danakil is like a natural laboratory, a window into both Earth's ancient past and the possibilities for life beyond our planet. But for humans, the Danakil Depression can be deadly. The combination of intense heat, toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide, and the complete absence of drinkable water makes survival without preparation almost impossible. The ground itself can be unstable. Thin salt crusts may conceal boiling pools just beneath the surface, and while the colors may be beautiful, they can also be a warning sign of the chemical danger below. Even experienced guides tread carefully here, following safe paths marked by years of local knowledge. Despite its dangers, this region has been home to the Afar people for centuries. They live in one of the most extreme climates on Earth, herding camels and mining salt by hand from the blinding white flats. Blocks of salt, once used as currency, are still loaded onto camel caravans that wind slowly across the desert. For them, the danakil is not just a hostile wasteland, it is home, a place where survival depends on a deep understanding of the land and its moods. From above, the danakil looks almost unreal, like the surface of another planet, and yet it is part of our Earth, a place where geology, chemistry, and life meet at their extremes. It is the kind of landscape that forces us to see the planet as a living, changing system, shaped by forces both ancient and ongoing. As the land continues to shift and open here, other parts of the world reveal their own strange extremes, places shaped not by heat and acid, but by cold, so deep it feels like another form of fire. In the far reaches of northeastern Siberia lies a village where winter is not a season, it is a permanent reality. Oymyakon sits in a valley between icy ridges, a place where the cold can sink so deep into the earth and sky that the air feels almost solid. In February of 1933, the temperature here plunged to an almost unimaginable minus 96 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest recorded for any permanently inhabited settlement on Earth. Even in what locals call warmer months, the ground never fully thaws. This extreme cold is not an accident of geography, but the result of a rare combination of factors. The valley traps frigid air like a bowl, allowing it to settle and grow colder each night. In winter, the sun barely scrapes above the horizon for a few hours a day, providing almost no warmth. Clear skies mean there is nothing to hold in the day's meager heat, and long polar nights drain it away entirely. Snow reflects what little sunlight does arrive, preventing the ground from absorbing and storing warmth. Here, science and survival intertwine in ways that are hard to imagine anywhere else. At these temperatures, the very air can be dangerous. Breathing deeply without covering your face can cause moisture in your lungs to crystallize, leading to a painful, burning sensation. Eyelashes freeze together in minutes. Spit freezes before it hits the ground. Metal becomes so cold it can pull the skin away from ungloved fingers instantly. Engines are useless if left outside. The oil thickens, the fuel turns to gel, and batteries die within minutes. Villagers keep their vehicles running for hours, sometimes days, just to ensure they will start again. Water pipes must be buried deep or heated constantly to prevent them from freezing solid. Every daily task becomes a test of preparation and endurance. Yet, despite these conditions, Oymyakon is home to a small, tightly knit community. People here live in wooden houses, insulated with thick layers of material, often heated by wood stoves that burn day and night. Diets are heavy with meat and fish, since growing crops is nearly impossible. Frozen horse meat, reindeer, and fish like omul are staples, eaten raw or boiled in soups. The body's need for calories in such cold is enormous. Every breath, every movement burns fuel just to keep the core temperature stable. Science explains why life can persist here at all. Human survival in extreme cold depends on maintaining core body temperature above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Below this, hypothermia begins to set in, slowing the heart and clouding the mind. The people of Oymyakon have mastered the art of insulation, layering furs and modern materials, keeping exposed skin to an absolute minimum. They have adapted routines to conserve heat, minimizing time outdoors, working in short bursts, and staying in groups when possible. Even the local animals reflect the adaptations required for survival. Yakutian horses grow thick, shaggy coats to withstand the chill. Dogs develop dense fur and strong builds to pull sleds over the frozen ground. In the rivers, fish have antifreeze-like proteins in their blood that prevent ice crystals from forming. These natural designs mirror what engineers and scientists study when developing materials and technologies for extreme environments. And while most of the world sees Oymyakon as impossibly hostile, for the people here it is simply home. Children walk to school bundled in layers so thick they look twice their size. Hunters set out across the tundra, their movements measured and deliberate. Life moves slowly, but with purpose, every action shaped by the demands of the cold. Beyond the frozen horizon, however, there are places where survival depends not on withstanding the absence of heat, but on enduring environments so filled with life that every step can be dangerous. Off the coast of southeastern Brazil, in the Atlantic Ocean, there is an island that from a distance looks like a tropical paradise: lush green forest, rocky cliffs, and the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore. But anyone who knows its name, Ilha da Queimada Grande, also knows that stepping onto it is one of the most dangerous decisions a human can make. This is Snake Island, and according to studies, it is home to roughly one snake for every square meter of land. That means if you stood still in one spot, within arm's reach, there could be more than a dozen deadly snakes hidden in the undergrowth, curled around tree branches, or moving silently beneath the leaves. The most infamous of these snakes is the golden lancehead viper, a species found nowhere else on Earth. Evolution on this isolated island has given it venom so potent it can break down human flesh at a cellular level. Scientists who have studied its biochemistry describe it as hemotoxic, meaning it destroys blood cells and tissue, but also fast-acting enough to cause organ failure in hours if untreated. On the mainland, golden lanceheads have natural predators that help keep populations in check. But here, without those predators, the snakes have multiplied into numbers that seem almost impossible. The story of how they came to dominate this island is tied to changes in sea level thousands of years ago. At one time, Snake Island was connected to mainland Brazil, part of the coastal rainforest. When the sea rose and cut it off, animals that could swim or fly left, but the snakes remained. Over time, the lack of mammal prey forced them to adapt to a diet of seabirds. This change in diet is thought to be one reason their venom became so dangerously strong. Bird prey requires a faster kill to prevent escape. For people, there is no safe place to stand here. The snakes hunt in the trees, on the ground, and even in the rocky crevices near the shoreline. Many are camouflaged so well that they blend into the dappled sunlight, filtering through the forest canopy, invisible until it is too late. Scientists visiting for research wear heavy protective gear and work in teams, moving slowly and deliberately, scanning every step. The Brazilian government has declared the island off-limits to the public, both to protect people from the snakes and to protect the snakes from people. The only exceptions are for scientific teams with permits and for the occasional Navy visit to maintain the lighthouse that still stands on the island's highest point. That lighthouse, however, is at the heart of one of Snake Island's most chilling stories, the legend of the last lighthouse keeper. According to local accounts, Decades ago, the lighthouse was manned by a keeper and his family. One night, snakes entered through an open window. The family fled into the darkness, but in every direction they turned, more snakes appeared. The story goes that they never made it off the island, and their bodies were found days later. While historians debate the truth of the tale, it has become part of the island's dark reputation, passed down like a warning. Biologists see Snake Island as a natural laboratory, a rare, closed ecosystem that reveals how isolation can drive extreme adaptations. But even for them, each trip is a reminder of how fragile the line is between observation and danger. The air is humid and heavy with the scent of wet leaves, and every rustle could be wind or something watching from the shadows. From this small, snake-filled island, the path of the story moves far from tropical heat into landscapes shaped by human industry, places where the greatest threat is not a living predator, but something invisible and airborne, capable of killing from a distance. In the remote Pilbara region of Western Australia lies a place that feels frozen in time, a silent town stripped of life, its streets empty, its buildings weathered by decades of neglect. This is Wittenoom, once a thriving mining settlement built around the promise of opportunity and wealth. In the mid-20th century, people came from all over the country, drawn by the chance to work in the booming blue asbestos industry. Families settled here, children played in dusty streets, and the mine provided steady wages in a harsh, beautiful desert landscape. But beneath the prosperity, danger was already in the air, quite literally. The fine, needle-like fibers of asbestos, invisible to the eye, floated through the town's atmosphere. At the time, asbestos was celebrated as a miracle mineral, resistant to heat, strong, and cheap to produce. Workers hauled it from the earth, crushing and processing it in clouds of pale dust that clung to skin, hair, and clothes. There were no masks, no protective suits, no warnings. People worked day after day breathing it in, unaware that each breath carried a silent threat. Asbestos fibers are so fine they can lodge deep inside the lungs, where the body cannot break them down or remove them. Over years, sometimes decades, they cause inflammation and scarring, leading to deadly diseases like asbestosis, lung cancer, and mesothelioma, an aggressive cancer with no cure. The tragedy of wittenoom is that these illnesses do not appear immediately. By the time symptoms emerge, it is often far too late for treatment to make a difference. In wittenoom, the contamination was not confined to the mine itself. The dust covered the streets, settled on rooftops, and even blew into backyards. Children played in piles of mine tailings as if they were sand dunes. Residents used the blue asbestos waste to surface driveways and playgrounds, not knowing they were laying down a hazard that would last for generations. For decades, the danger spread quietly, unnoticed, and unstoppable. When the health risks of asbestos finally became undeniable, the mine closed in the late 1960s. By then, the damage had already been done. Nearly everyone who lived or worked in wittenoom was exposed. Over time, medical studies revealed devastating statistics. A large proportion of former residents developed asbestos-related diseases, with mortality rates far above the national average. The town became one of the worst public health disasters in Australian history. The government's response was slow but decisive. Over the years, wittenoom was gradually removed from official maps. Services were cut off, homes were bought back and demolished, and access roads were sealed. Warning signs now stand at the edge of the area, alerting anyone who might wander too close that the ground and air remain contaminated. Even short visits are considered a risk, as wind can still carry asbestos fibers from the remaining tailings. Today, Wittenoom is a ghost town in every sense. The silence here is unnerving. No voices, no traffic, just the desert wind moving through abandoned buildings. Rusting metal roofs groan under the weight of decades, and faded signs still hang above the entrances of shops long since emptied. The once busy main street is now just a strip of cracked asphalt overgrown with weeds, its only visitors the occasional photographer or journalist who dares to enter despite the danger. Yet, the Pilbara's striking red cliffs and endless skies remain just as they were when people first arrived, a stark reminder of how beauty and danger can exist side by side. From the poisoned air of Wittenoom, the story shifts toward places where nature's own extremes heat, cold, water, and wind shape the risk, testing human survival in completely different ways. In the heart of California's Death Valley, there is a flat, cracked expanse called Racetrack Playa, a place so dry and silent that it almost feels outside of time. The surface stretches for miles, ringed by distant, jagged mountains. When the sun rises over this barren land, the heat builds quickly, climbing past 100 degrees before the morning has even ended. By midday, the air wavers in shimmering waves, and the ground beneath your feet radiates stored heat like an open oven. It is here, on this lifeless lake bed, that one of the strangest natural mysteries on Earth played out for decades. Scattered across the playa are dozens of large, heavy stones. Some are no bigger than a loaf of bread, others weigh as much as a full-grown person. But each one tells a story, a trail scratched into the hardened mud, stretching behind it for yards, sometimes hundreds of feet, as though the rock had decided to get up and walk. These tracks are clean and distinct, bending and weaving in odd directions, occasionally even looping back on themselves. The strangest part? No one ever saw the stones move. For years, scientists, hikers, and the curious public debated what could possibly cause these silent migrations. Theories ranged from powerful desert winds pushing the rocks across a slippery surface, to floods lifting them just enough to slide, to more exotic and less scientific ideas about magnetic forces or even alien intervention. The mystery endured partly because of how remote Racetrack Playa. Reaching it means hours of travel on rough, tire-shredding dirt roads, and the brutal heat ensures few people linger long enough to witness anything firsthand. But then, in the early 21st century, researchers decided to bring technology to the problem. They placed GPS trackers on select rocks and set up time-lapse cameras to watch the playa for months at a time. What they discovered was far stranger and more delicate than anyone had guessed. In the rare winter months, when night temperatures plunge below freezing, thin sheets of ice can form over shallow pools of water that collect on the playa's surface. As the sun rises, the ice begins to crack and shift, breaking into floating panels that are still large enough to push the rocks. With the water beneath them acting as a lubricant, the ice panels move slowly under the force of light breezes, just a few inches per second, gently carrying the stones along and carving those long, meandering trails. The process is so subtle that it is almost invisible in real time. From a distance, the rocks appear perfectly still, yet hour by hour they inch forward, sometimes moving for only a few minutes in an entire day. Then, as the water evaporates and the ground bakes dry, the trails remain, preserved until the next rare set of conditions occurs. In some years, the stones never move at all. Even knowing the science, standing on Racetrack Playa feels unsettling. The silence is total, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind. There is no shelter here, no shade. If you arrive in summer, the heat can quickly become dangerous. Death Valley holds the record for some of the highest air temperatures ever recorded on Earth, and each year people underestimate the risk. Hikers collapse from heat stroke, vehicles break down far from help, and the remoteness makes rescue difficult. The very name of the place is a warning. This is a landscape where mistakes can be fatal. And yet, it is exactly that harshness that makes the moving stones seem even more otherworldly, a slow, patient dance of geology and climate playing out in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet. From here, the journey into strange and perilous places continues, toward lands where the danger doesn't come from the heat, but from invisible killers hidden in the water itself. Deep in the Ural Mountains of Russia lies a small, unassuming body of water called Lake Karachay. From a distance, it looks peaceful, its surface still, reflecting the gray sky above. But beneath that calm lies one of the deadliest places on Earth. Here, the danger is invisible, silent, and immediate. Standing on its shores for just 1 hour can deliver a lethal dose of radiation strong enough to kill a human within days. Even brief exposure can cause severe radiation sickness, leaving burns, nausea, and internal organ damage. The lake's lethal nature is not a product of nature itself, but of human history. During the height of the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons program in the mid-20th century, the secret Mayak Production Association was built nearby. This vast facility processed and refined plutonium, producing material for the Soviet nuclear arsenal. With the Cold War in full swing, speed and secrecy were valued far more than safety. Waste from these processes, radioactive sludge, contaminated water, and nuclear byproducts needed to be disposed of quickly. The solution, chosen in an era before strict environmental protections, was to dump it directly into the nearest body of water, Lake Karachay. Year after year, thousands of tons of radioactive material poured into the lake. Plutonium, cesium, strontium, the most toxic isotopes known to science, settled into the mud and water. Unlike chemical pollution, radiation doesn't simply dilute or break down with time. These isotopes remain deadly for centuries or even millennia, releasing invisible energy that tears through living cells and DNA. By the 1962nd, the lake had become so contaminated that even walking along its banks was dangerous. The deadly reach of Lake Karachay is not limited to the ground. Radiation levels above the water are so high that even birds, flying low across its surface, have been seen dropping lifeless into the water mid-flight. In the summer heat, the shallow parts of the lake sometimes dry up, revealing cracked mud laced with radioactive dust. Winds blowing across the surface can carry this dust for miles, spreading contamination far beyond the lake itself. In 1968, a severe drought struck the region. The water level dropped drastically, exposing wide stretches of the lakebed. A powerful windstorm followed, lifting radioactive silt into the air. The fine particles drifted across dozens of towns and villages. Tens of thousands of people were exposed to dangerous radiation doses in a matter of hours. Many developed cancers, immune disorders, and other long-term health problems. In the years that followed, the area became a quiet disaster zone, its toll hidden behind Soviet secrecy. Scientists measuring the lake's radioactivity have recorded levels so extreme they are difficult to comprehend. Near the most contaminated spots, radiation levels have been measured at hundreds of roentgens per hour, enough to be fatal in less than 60 minutes. For comparison, a normal background dose from the natural environment is less than a few hundredths of a roentgen per year. Today, Lake Karachay is off limits. Most of its shoreline is fenced and guarded, and the Soviet-era nuclear complex nearby is still one of the most restricted sites in Russia. In an effort to contain the danger, engineers have filled parts of the lake with concrete blocks and rocks, trying to cover the radioactive sediment and prevent it from becoming airborne again. But the contamination remains locked in place, but still emitting its invisible, deadly energy. The existence of such a place serves as a stark reminder of how human technology can change the environment in ways that nature never intended. The water is no longer just a lake, it has become a concentrated pool of man-made danger, one where the threat isn't seen, heard, or smelled, but is written into the very atoms swirling beneath its surface. From here, the story moves to another place shaped by human hands, one where the ground itself has been burning for decades without pause. In the barren heart of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, there is a glow that never fades. Even from a distance, the horizon shimmers as if the sun has set fire to the sand. Step closer, and you find yourself standing at the edge of an enormous pit, nearly the size of a football field, filled not with water or rock, but with roaring flames. Locals call it the door to hell. For over half a century, this crater has burned without pause, day and night, through rain, wind, and storms. Its heat so intense that standing near the rim feels like leaning into the mouth of a furnace. The origins of this inferno trace back to the early 1970s, when the Soviet Union was conducting gas exploration across Central Asia. The Karakum Desert is one of the most gas-rich regions on Earth, with vast underground pockets of methane trapped beneath the sand. A drilling team, searching for natural gas reserves, set up equipment at what seemed like a promising site, but when they pierced the earth, the ground beneath them collapsed. The drill site gave way to a massive underground cavern, swallowing their rigs and exposing a huge gas pocket. In moments, the air filled with methane. For those on site, the danger was clear. Methane is both toxic and highly flammable. Left unchecked, it could poison nearby communities or ignite in an uncontrolled explosion. The Soviet engineers faced a desperate choice. In an attempt to prevent a disaster, they decided to burn off the gas, expecting it to take only a few days. Those few days have turned into more than 50 years. The gas has never stopped flowing. Beneath the desert, the vast reserve continues to feed the flames, creating an endless firestorm that has become one of the most surreal sights on the planet. The heat radiating from the crater is so intense that sand and rock along its edges fuse into glassy surfaces. Inside, flames leap several meters into the air, their color shifting from deep orange to bright white depending on the gas concentration and wind. Scientists studying the site describe it as a rare example of a long-term, self-sustaining gas fire. Methane, lighter than air, seeps steadily from underground reservoirs. As it rises, it meets the superheated environment inside the crater, igniting instantly. The process continues. In a cycle, gas feeds the fire, and the fire draws more gas to the surface. Even without human intervention, the blaze sustains itself. Standing at the crater's rim is an experience unlike any other. The heat distorts the air, making the edges of the pit shimmer. The roar of the flames mixes with the low rumble of gas escaping from vents deep within the earth. Visitors often describe it as unnerving, as though something ancient and alive were breathing beneath the ground. Some say it feels like being stared at by the planet itself, a reminder that the Earth is not as inert as it appears. The door to hell has become an unlikely tourist attraction, drawing adventurers from around the world to one of the most remote landscapes in Central Asia. Reaching it means traveling for hours through rolling dunes and barren plains, often in extreme heat or bitter cold. But for those who arrive, the sight is unforgettable, a fiery wound in the desert, burning with the energy of a star. And while the flames here are the work of human error, they connect to something much older and more primal, the Earth's deep reservoirs of gas and fire hidden beneath our feet. From this place of eternal flame, the journey leads into a wilderness where nature itself has created a paradise of life and a labyrinth of dangers unlike anywhere else. In the remote lowlands of northern Bolivia lies a stretch of wilderness so lush, so alive, that it feels like the planet's pulse beats strongest here. This is Madidi National Park, often called the most biodiverse place on Earth. Within its boundaries, you can find snow-capped Andean peaks, dense Amazonian rainforest, and winding rivers that disappear into swamps and floodplains. Scientists estimate that thousands of plant and animal species still remain undiscovered here, hidden within its tangled green heart. Every step feels like entering a world that is both beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Madidi's beauty hides a sobering truth. It is not only one of the most life-filled places on the planet, but also one of the most toxic. The sheer diversity of plants means you are never far from something that can harm you. Some leaves here carry toxins so strong they can burn skin on contact. Others secrete milky sap that can cause blisters within minutes. There are vines whose oils can seep into the bloodstream through the tiniest scratch, triggering swelling and fever. Even brushing against certain stems can leave a rash that lasts for days. The danger extends beyond the plants. Madidi is home to a dizzying array of venomous animals, each adapted to defend itself in the crowded competition of the rainforest. Brightly colored frogs, no bigger than a fingernail, carry enough toxins in their skin to kill a human many times over. Venomous snakes, some camouflaged so perfectly against the leaf litter that even seasoned guides step carefully, can deliver bites that cause paralysis or stop the heart. Spiders with potent neurotoxins hide under leaves and in the shadows of tree roots, waiting for the unwary to get too close. But the park's hazards are not always obvious. The insects here can be as dangerous as the larger predators. Tiny parasitic flies can spread diseases that attack the skin or internal organs. Mosquitoes carry strains of malaria and dengue fever. Some ants inject venom that causes intense burning pain, so severe that locals call one species the bullet ant because its sting feels like being shot. For the indigenous communities who live along the edges of Madidi, the forest is both home and teacher. They know which plants can heal and which can harm, which trails to take and which to avoid. Their warnings to outsiders are never taken lightly. Do not enter alone. The rainforest can be disorienting, with dense foliage blocking the sun and countless paths that look identical. Even experienced travelers can become lost in hours, and here, being lost is not just inconvenient, it is life-threatening. Guides trained in the ways of the forest move with a quiet confidence, reading signs invisible to most eyes. A broken branch, a faint track in the mud, the call of a distant bird, these are clues that mark the safe way forward. They also know how to avoid the park's silent threats, where snakes are likely to coil near water, which logs hide scorpions, and how to step lightly through patches of forest where toxic plants crowd the trail. Madidi's reputation as the most biodiverse and most dangerous place is not an exaggeration. For scientists, it is a living laboratory where every expedition might bring a new species into human knowledge. For adventurers, it is a place where beauty and risk exist side by side, where the line between awe and danger is razor thin. Beyond the forest canopy, the land rises into more open terrain and the dangers shift. Here, in a completely different environment, another place exists that challenges human limits, not with venom or poison, but with cold so severe it can turn breath into ice before it leaves your lips. Deep in the frozen heart of Antarctica, there is a body of water that has not felt the warmth of the sun or the touch of open air for at least 15 million years. It lies hidden beneath more than 2 miles of solid ice, sealed away since before humans existed, before our earliest ancestors even walked upright. This is Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes in the world, and one of the most isolated environments on the planet. To picture it, imagine a vast, dark reservoir stretching for more than 200 miles in length and nearly 30 miles in width, yet entirely invisible from the surface. The weight of the overlying ice exerts crushing pressure, but geothermal heat from Earth's interior keeps the water in a liquid state. This creates a unique, stable environment, one that may have been evolving independently since before the last major ice sheets formed. The scientific curiosity surrounding Lake Vostok is immense. In theory, a habitat sealed off for millions of years could host life forms unlike anything else on Earth. Microbes, bacteria, or perhaps more complex organisms could have adapted to survive in conditions of total darkness, near freezing temperatures, and high pressure. Such life would not only deepen our understanding of biology on Earth, but also offer clues about what might exist beneath the icy crusts of distant moons like Europa or Enceladus. But exploring Lake Vostok is not as simple as drilling down and taking a look. The fear is that by breaching the lake's protective ice cover, we could introduce modern contaminants to an ecosystem that has remained untouched for longer than human civilization has existed. Even more concerning is the possibility that organisms preserved in the lake could be released into our world. If the lake harbors ancient bacteria or viruses that have been sealed away for millions of years, humanity has no immune history against them. The mere act of contact could be dangerous. When Russian scientists first drilled into the ice above Lake Vostok in the late 20th century, they stopped short of letting the water surface, choosing instead to study ice cores containing frozen water that had slowly refrozen from the lake's surface. These cores hinted at unusual microbial life, but the samples were not pure enough to confirm it definitively. In later years, techniques were developed to try and sample the water directly while minimizing contamination, but each attempt carried significant debate within the scientific community over safety and ethics. Adding to the intrigue, instruments mapping the region have detected strange magnetic anomalies in the ice above the lake. These anomalies suggest that there may be unusual mineral deposits, or perhaps even geothermal features on the lake bed that are altering the magnetic field. Some researchers propose that hydrothermal vents, similar to those found in the deep oceans, could be present, providing energy and nutrients for life in an otherwise lightless environment. If true, this would make Lake Vostok even more comparable to the hidden oceans of icy moons, where such vents are thought to support entire ecosystems in total darkness. Standing on the ice above the lake, the surface gives no clue to the world beneath. The wind howls relentlessly, temperatures can drop below -80 degrees Fahrenheit, and the horizon is a stark, unbroken expanse of white, yet 2 miles below, the lake's waters remain liquid, dark, and possibly alive. It is a place where time has been standing still, a frozen vault holding secrets from a chapter of Earth's history we have never seen. From this locked-away Antarctic world, The journey into places just as isolated yet much closer to human reach continues, into regions where the danger comes not from ancient bacteria, but from the living, breathing inhabitants that rule their lands with deadly precision. Far out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean lies a place so remote that no human could survive there without outside help. It is called Point Nemo, a name borrowed from Jules Verne's famous captain, and it represents what scientists call the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, the single most distant location from any land on Earth. If you were to stand, or rather float, at Point Nemo, the nearest solid ground would be more than 1,400 nautical miles away in any direction. That is farther than the distance from New York to Miami. There are no islands, no reefs, no fishing villages, and no rescue stations. The only things around you would be endless blue water, the curve of the horizon, and the faint line where the sky meets the sea. The remoteness is so complete that, for most of the year, the people closest to Point Nemo are not on Earth at all. They are astronauts aboard the International Space Station, passing hundreds of miles overhead. This extreme isolation makes Point Nemo not just a geographic curiosity, but a practical choice for one of the most unusual uses of ocean space: the spacecraft graveyard. Since the late 20th century, space agencies have steered retired satellites, cargo ships, and even space stations toward this watery target when bringing them back to Earth. By sending them into the atmosphere so that they break apart and crash into this uninhabited stretch of ocean, agencies reduce the risk of debris hitting populated areas. Dozens of decommissioned spacecraft, including the Russian space station Mir, now lie in the depths beneath Point Nemo, resting silently on the ocean floor. Despite this controlled destruction, Point Nemo itself is not a place anyone visits for leisure. In fact, reaching it requires careful planning, specialized vessels, and an acceptance of risk. The Pacific in this region is not a gentle expanse. It can be a hostile and unpredictable environment. The waters are deep, with swells that can reach heights capable of flipping smaller boats. Storm systems sweep through without warning, and because there is no nearby landmass, there are no ports to take shelter in and no coast guard to call for help. If something goes wrong here, there is truly zero possibility of immediate rescue. The nearest ships are often thousands of miles away, and it could take days, even weeks, before help could arrive. From a scientific perspective, this isolation makes Point Nemo a fascinating location for studying ocean currents, wind patterns, and the transport of debris across the seas. The currents that pass through here are part of the South Pacific Gyre, a massive, slow-moving circular system of water that traps and pushes floating material in predictable paths. Because there is so little human activity nearby, researchers have been able to use the area as a kind of natural laboratory to observe how pollutants, microplastics, and even drifting marine organisms move through the ocean over time. Life in the waters around Point Nemo is sparse. The extreme distance from nutrient-rich coastal upwellings means the area is something of an oceanic desert, with relatively few fish and plankton compared to other parts of the Pacific. Still, certain species, including hardy seabirds and deep-diving marine mammals, do pass through the region on their migrations. These brief visitors are the only signs of life in an otherwise vast and empty world. For those who map and measure the planet, Point Nemo is a reminder of how much of Earth remains untouched by human hands, and how distance alone can shape the way we use and avoid certain spaces. From this absolute center of oceanic nowhere, the story flows on to places where the isolation is not defined by water, but by land so strange and ancient that it looks like it belongs to another planet entirely. Off the coast of Yemen, in the far reaches of the Arabian Sea, there is a place so strange and otherworldly that it feels as if it belongs more to science fiction than to Earth. This is Socotra Island, a fragment of land that has been cut off from the mainland for millions of years. Its isolation has created a living laboratory where evolution has taken its own path, producing plants and animals found nowhere else on the planet. The first thing that strikes any visitor, whether arriving by boat across the turquoise waters or glimpsing it from the air, is the alien silhouette of the dragon blood tree. Its thick trunk rises like the column of an ancient temple, then bursts outward into a dense umbrella-like canopy. This unusual shape helps the tree capture moisture from the air, funneling it down into its roots in a place where rainfall is scarce. But its most remarkable feature is hidden within. If you pierce its bark, it bleeds a deep crimson sap. For centuries, people have collected this resin, using it for medicine, dyes, and even as a varnish. The deep red liquid is what gives the tree its name, a reminder that in this place, even plants seem to hold their own mysterious lifeblood. The dragon blood tree is just one of many species that seem like the products of an artist's wild imagination. There are bottle trees with swollen, twisted trunks that store water like living cisterns, their pink blossoms spilling over the rocky slopes. Succulents grow in bizarre spirals, and desert roses stand like miniature sculptures carved by wind. Almost a third of Socotra's plant life is endemic, meaning it evolved here and exists nowhere else. This level of uniqueness is comparable to the Galapagos Islands, but unlike those volcanic islands, Socotra's roots stretch deep into the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana, making its biodiversity a window into a much older world. But beauty here often hides danger. Socotra is also home to venomous reptiles, snakes whose bites can stop a heart, and scorpions with stings that can paralyze. The island's remote cliffs and limestone caves shelter creatures that have had no reason to fear humans for millennia, making them unpredictable. Even the insect life here can be unsettling. There are brightly patterned spiders that shimmer like jewels but deliver a powerful bite, and beetles that emit noxious chemicals when threatened. The absence of large predators has allowed smaller, highly specialized animals to thrive, some developing toxins as their primary defense. The human presence on Socotra has been limited for much of its history. Its rugged mountains, rocky shores, and intense heat made it difficult for outsiders to settle in large numbers. Local communities adapted to the land's rhythms, living in small villages, herding goats, and harvesting what the island provided. Oral traditions speak of how the island's plants and animals must be treated with respect, and elders warn visitors not to wander without a guide. These warnings are not superstition, they are born from generations of experience with an environment that can be as dangerous as it is beautiful. Modern science has only recently begun to explore Socotra in detail, revealing just how fragile its ecosystems are. The island's position, more than 200 miles from the Arabian Peninsula and separated by deep waters, has kept many invasive species away, allowing its unique organisms to survive unchanged for countless generations. But this same isolation makes the environment vulnerable. A single introduced pest or disease could have devastating effects, and climate change threatens the delicate balance that has sustained life here for millions of years. Seen from space, Socotra appears as a pale, rugged shard in the deep blue of the Arabian Sea, fringed with beaches and coral reefs. On the ground, it feels almost like another planet, a place where evolution's imagination has been allowed to run free, creating shapes, colors, and life forms that seem impossible anywhere else. And from here, the journey moves toward another realm where human contact is not just rare, but actively resisted, a place where the inhabitants have guarded their isolation for centuries and meet strangers with arrows rather than open hands. Far out in the emerald waters of the Andaman Sea lies a small, forest-covered island that has resisted the modern world longer than almost any other place on Earth. From above, North Sentinel Island appears untouched, a stretch of white sand beaches wrapping around dense jungle, with no ports, no roads, and no signs of agriculture or buildings. But the moment an outsider draws too close, its hidden inhabitants make their presence unmistakable. The Sentinelese, as they are known, are among the last uncontacted tribes on the planet. They have lived here for tens of thousands of years, adapting to the island's rhythms in complete isolation. Archaeological evidence from nearby islands suggests that their ancestors may have settled the Andaman chain more than 60,000 years ago, long before the pyramids, long before writing, even before many of the great human migrations out of Africa had finished. The Sentinelese have never joined the global story of agriculture, trade, and cities. They remain in a chapter of human history that has been closed almost everywhere else. Life for the Sentinelese is shaped entirely by the island itself. The dense jungle provides fruit, honey, and game, while the surrounding waters offer fish, turtle, and shellfish. They craft their tools from stone, wood, and bone, and use fire in ways that have likely been passed down through thousands of generations. To the outside world, their technology seems frozen in time, but to them, it is perfectly adapted to their environment, a balance that has kept them alive for millennia. What makes North Sentinel Island infamous, however, is not simply its isolation, but its fierce protection. The Sentinelese do not welcome outsiders. Boats that drift too close are met with shouts, gestures, and, if the warning is ignored, a hail of arrows. In 2006, two fishermen who accidentally strayed into the restricted waters were killed and buried on the beach by members of the tribe. In 2018, an American missionary who attempted to land on the island despite repeated warnings was shot with arrows before he could speak to anyone. These acts are not random violence to the Sentinelese. Outsiders are not just strangers, but a possible threat to their survival. And there is good reason for this fear. When other indigenous groups in the Andaman Islands were contacted in the past, many were devastated by diseases brought from the outside, illnesses like influenza and measles, to which they had no immunity. Entire communities were reduced to a fraction of their original numbers in a matter of years. For a group as small as the Sentinelese, even a single outbreak could be catastrophic. To protect them, the Indian government has made it illegal to approach within 3 miles of the island. The surrounding waters are patrolled, and even research is conducted from a distance using long lenses and drones. What little we know about the Sentinelese comes from rare observations. Small groups moving along the beach, fishing in dugout canoes, or gathering in open spaces near the tree line. They appear healthy and self-sufficient, showing no signs of malnutrition. Their language is unlike any other in the world, and attempts to communicate have failed. Even speakers of closely related Andamanese languages cannot understand them. Every clue suggests that this is a culture that has evolved entirely apart from the rest of humanity. For scientists, North Sentinel Island is a living time capsule, a place where human life has followed its own path for thousands of years without outside influence. But it is also a reminder that not every mystery is ours to solve. Some knowledge belongs only to those who live it. From here, the journey shifts from a forbidden island guarded by human hands to a place where even radios and compasses seem to fail, a silent stretch of land where technology itself becomes unreliable. In the northern deserts of Mexico, there is a stretch of land where the modern world seems to falter. Travelers describe it as eerily quiet, not just in sound, but in the way technology itself falls silent. Radios that work perfectly well outside its borders turn to static as soon as they cross in. Compasses spin without direction, unable to settle on north. It is called La Zona del Silencio, the zone of silence, and for decades it has drawn scientists, military researchers, and curious wanderers, all trying to understand why this patch of desert seems to reject the rules of the world outside. The zone lies in the Mapimi Desert, a remote and sun-baked expanse far from major towns. From the ground, it looks like any other arid landscape: dusty plains, scattered cacti, and the jagged silhouettes of distant mountains. But what happens here is anything but ordinary. Pilots have reported that their navigation instruments behave erratically when flying over the area. Vehicles with radio communication systems often lose signal entirely, as if the air itself swallows sound waves. Even satellites passing overhead have been said to experience unusual data dropouts, as though something in the ground is interfering with their connection. One of the most intriguing scientific puzzles is the area's connection to space, not through signals, but through falling rocks. The zone of silence has a remarkably high number of meteorite impacts compared to surrounding regions. Scientists studying the phenomenon have suggested that it might be due to subtle differences in Earth's magnetic field, drawing iron-rich space debris toward the ground here. Some meteorites recovered from the desert contain rare minerals, preserved perfectly in the dry climate, offering clues about the early solar system. Others appear to have come from deep within asteroids that were shattered long before our planet was formed, making them billions of years old. This link to the cosmos has only deepened the zone's reputation as a place where the ordinary laws of nature bend. For locals, the arrival of meteorites has long been folded into stories of strange lights in the sky and glowing objects that seem to hover before vanishing without a sound. While scientists point out that many of these lights could be explained as meteors burning up in the atmosphere or even misidentified aircraft, some sightings defy easy classification. Witnesses speak of perfectly spherical lights that move slowly, change direction, or pulse rhythmically before disappearing. The strangeness is not limited to the sky. In the stillness of the desert night, visitors have described hearing voices that seem to come from nowhere, or the sound of footsteps following them even when they are alone. These experiences have fueled more outlandish theories, from UFO landing sites to portals to other dimensions, though mainstream science focuses on the measurable anomalies, such as magnetic disturbances, unusual mineral deposits, and radio interference. One working theory is that iron-rich deposits beneath the desert floor could be distorting electromagnetic signals, much like how a magnet can disrupt a compass needle. The first major wave of attention came in the early 1970s, when an American missile, launched from a test site in New Mexico, veered off course and crashed into the zone. The incident brought military investigators to the area, followed closely by geologists and physicists. They confirmed the signal disruption, but found no single, simple cause. Instead, the zone seemed to be a perfect storm of geological and magnetic quirks, a combination that remains unique in the world. Even with scientific equipment, studying the zone is a challenge. Instruments meant to measure radiation, magnetism, and atmospheric conditions can malfunction without warning. Researchers have to rely on repeated surveys over years to gather enough consistent data to form patterns. And because the area is so remote, Just reaching it involves navigating unmarked desert roads where GPS is unreliable and landmarks are few. As the wind sweeps over the cracked earth and the sun burns high overhead, it's easy to imagine that the silence here is more than just the absence of sound. It's a curtain drawn over some deep and ancient secret. And as the desert stretches on, the journey leads toward another place where nature hides its dangers in an entirely different form, a lake whose calm waters once unleashed a wave of death in an instant. In the remote highlands of northwestern Cameroon lies a deep crater lake with waters so still and reflective that it looks peaceful, almost inviting. Yet beneath that calm surface, Lake Nyos hides one of the most dangerous natural traps on Earth, a silent force capable of killing thousands without warning. On the evening of August 21st, 1986, the lake released its secret. Without any dramatic eruption, without flames or ash, a cloud of carbon dioxide suddenly burst from the water and rolled silently down the surrounding valleys. It was invisible, odorless, and heavier than air. Within minutes, the gas displaced the oxygen in the atmosphere, suffocating everything in its path. Entire villages lay still in the morning light. More than 1,700 people and countless animals had died before they even knew what was happening. The science behind this tragedy begins deep below the lake's surface. Lake Nyos sits in the crater of an ancient volcano, part of a chain along the Cameroon volcanic line. Although the volcano is dormant, it still releases carbon dioxide from deep within the Earth's mantle. Normally, this gas escapes harmlessly into the air, but in the case of Lake Nyos, it seeps up through the lake bed and becomes trapped in the cold, dense water at the bottom. Over years, the amount of dissolved gas builds up, creating a vast reservoir of potential danger. This is a rare phenomenon known as a limnic eruption, when a sudden disturbance causes that deep, gas-rich water to rise rapidly to the surface. As the pressure drops, the gas escapes in an explosive release, like shaking a bottle of soda and opening it all at once. At Lake Nyos, scientists believe that a landslide, heavy rainfall, or even a small earthquake may have triggered the 1986 disaster. Once the gas began to escape, it displaced the lake's surface water, setting off a chain reaction that freed even more carbon dioxide in a deadly cascade. The effects were swift and merciless. Because carbon dioxide is heavier than air, the cloud hugged the ground as it traveled, following the slopes down into nearby valleys where people lived. In the darkness of night, many victims were found exactly as they had been in their final moments, some still lying in bed, others slumped over cooking fires, and cattle frozen mid-step in fields. Those who survived described waking up gasping for breath, dizzy and disoriented, with no understanding of what had happened until daylight revealed the scale of the loss. When scientists arrived, they faced the challenge of explaining a disaster that left no scorch marks, no visible wave, and no traditional volcanic eruption. Testing the water confirmed the presence of massive amounts of dissolved carbon dioxide, along with the unique conditions that had allowed it to accumulate. It became clear that without intervention, the lake could build up gas again and release it without warning, repeating the catastrophe. To prevent another tragedy, engineers installed a system of vertical pipes reaching into the deepest layers of the lake. These pipes allow gas-rich water to be pumped to the surface in a controlled way, where the carbon dioxide can escape gradually and harmlessly into the atmosphere. While this has reduced the immediate danger, Lake Nyos remains a site under constant watch. The volcanic activity beneath it is still active at a low level, and the steep crater walls surrounding the lake are unstable, a large landslide could trigger another sudden gas release before the system could respond. Today, the region around Lake Nyos is quieter, but the memory of that night lingers. Scientists studying the event have used it to better understand other lakes in Africa with similar geological conditions, such as Lake Monon and Lake Kivu, both of which also hold enormous amounts of trapped gas. Monitoring these lakes is now part of an ongoing effort to ensure that what happened in Cameroon never catches another community by surprise. And as the lessons of Lake Nyos remind us, some of the deadliest forces in nature do not roar or blaze, they wait in silence, hidden until the right conditions set them free. Just as in the mountains of Bolivia, where a narrow road clings to cliffs high above the rainforest, danger can be invisible until it is suddenly all around you. High in the Bolivian Andes, there is a road carved into the mountainside that locals call El Camino de la Muerte, the Road of Death. To most of the world, it is known as Yungas Road, a ribbon of dirt and gravel that twists for more than 40 miles between the capital city of La Paz and the lush, subtropical Yungas region. At first glance, it looks like a path that should belong only to mountain goats, yet for decades, it was the main link for trucks, buses, and bicycles moving between the highlands and the lowlands. What makes Yungas Road so dangerous is not just its steepness, but the way it clings to the cliffs. In many stretches, the road is barely the width of a single vehicle, with no guardrails to stop anything that slips over the edge. One wrong move, a tire sliding on loose gravel, a misjudged turn, or a brake failure, and the drop can be over 1,000 feet straight down into the rainforest below. The air is thin at these altitudes, the cliffs sheer, and the margin for error non-existent. Every journey along Yungas Road begins high in the Andes, where the cold wind cuts like a knife and clouds swirl around jagged peaks. From there, the road descends sharply, losing more than 10,000 feet in elevation as it snakes toward the warm, humid valleys of the Yungas. That massive change in altitude means travelers pass through completely different climate zones in a single trip, from icy mountain passes to dense jungle. The transition is beautiful, but it's also part of what makes the road so treacherous. Weather here can change in moments. In the upper reaches, heavy fog often rolls in without warning, wrapping the road in a white blanket that reduces visibility to near zero. Drivers inch forward, sometimes unable to see even the edge of their own hood. As the road drops lower, tropical rains take over, turning the dirt surface into slippery mud. Water cascades down the cliff faces, creating makeshift waterfalls that spill directly across the road. In places, the flow is so strong that it can push a vehicle sideways toward the abyss. Traffic patterns along Yungas Road are unlike most other highways. Traditionally, vehicles drive on the left side here, the opposite of the norm in Bolivia, so that drivers can better judge how close their wheels are to the cliff edge. This strange reversal means that large trucks and buses often pass each other with only inches to spare, their outer tires perched dangerously close to empty space. For passengers looking down from a window seat, the view is nothing but clouds and treetops far below. From a scientific perspective, the road's danger is a product of geology, geography, and climate. The steep slopes are made of unstable rock and soil, which can give way in landslides after heavy rain. These landslides not only block the road, but can also sweep vehicles away entirely. The narrow width is a result of the original construction, which was done by hand and with basic tools in the 1930s, during a time when smaller traffic loads didn't require modern highway standards. And the combination of high-altitude weather systems and the humid Amazon basin creates a corridor where extreme weather is more frequent than in most places on Earth. For decades, hundreds of people died here every year. Crosses line the route, marking places where buses, trucks, and cars have gone over the edge. Some memorials are clustered together, reminders of accidents where entire vehicles and everyone inside were lost. These markers are not just for the dead, they also serve as warnings to the living, urging caution in a place where one lapse can mean the end. Although a safer bypass road was built in the early 2000s, Yungas Road has not been abandoned. It is now popular with adventure cyclists who travel from around the world to ride what is often called the most dangerous road in the world. For them, the challenge is part of the appeal, an extreme test that combines physical endurance with mental focus. Still, even for thrill seekers, the dangers are real. The same fog, rain, and sheer drops that once claimed the lives of travelers still wait for anyone who underestimates them. And as the narrow path descends into the green depths of the rainforest, the air thickens with moisture. The sound of distant rivers rises from below, and the line between beauty and danger blurs, just as it does in other wild places where nature sets the rules and humans must follow. In Bolivia's remote jungles, those rules can change with the turn of the weather, much like the shifting threats faced deep within the world's most biodiverse and most toxic forests. Off the coast of Queensland, where the warm waters of the Coral Sea lap against golden shores, lies Fraser Island, the largest sand island on Earth. From a distance, it looks like a tropical paradise. The beaches stretch for miles in soft, pale arcs, dunes rise like sculpted waves, and freshwater lakes glisten in the sunday. But beneath the beauty lies a harsh reality. Fraser Island is as dangerous as it is breathtaking, and its dangers are written not just in stories from locals, but in the biology and geology of the place itself. The sea surrounding Fraser Island is home to some of Australia's most dangerous marine life. In the shallows, almost invisible to the naked eye, drift the box jellyfish and their smaller but equally deadly relatives, the irukandji. These creatures may look delicate, but their tentacles carry toxins so powerful they can stop a human heart. Their stings cause excruciating pain, muscle cramps, and in severe cases, death. Even experienced swimmers here tread carefully, watching the water as if scanning for ghosts, because a jellyfish's transparency makes it nearly impossible to spot until it is too late. Further out, the deeper waters are patrolled by sharks. The island sits near migratory routes for tiger sharks, large predators that can reach more than 15 feet in length. They are curious hunters, often drawn closer by splashing or the scent of fish. Surfers and fishermen know to keep an eye on the waves because sometimes a dark shape will pass beneath, a reminder that the food chain here still operates as it has for millions of years. These are not the movie monsters of fiction, but apex predators fulfilling their role in the marine ecosystem, a role that commands respect. On land, the threat shifts from sea to shore. Fraser Island is home to a population of dingoes considered among the purest in Australia, untainted by crossbreeding with domestic dogs. Sleek, amber-coated, and highly intelligent, they move with the confidence of animals that have roamed this land for thousands of years. For the most part, dingoes avoid humans, but they are opportunistic hunters, and their curiosity can turn dangerous if they associate people with food. Attacks on tourists, while rare, have been documented. Park rangers advise visitors to never feed them, never run, and never turn their backs. The dingoes here may look like beautiful wild dogs, but they are still predators. Even the ground beneath your feet on Fraser Island holds its own hazards. Along the shoreline and near certain dune areas, there are patches of quicksand like wet sand. They form when water saturates loose sand layers, creating pockets that can collapse under weight. To an unsuspecting walker, the surface looks solid until a step sinks ankle deep, then knee deep, pulling downward with surprising force. While these pockets are rarely fatal, they can trap people long enough for tides to become a risk, and they serve as another reminder that this island is always shifting beneath the forces of wind and water. The landscape itself is shaped by constant movement. Fraser Island is built entirely of sand, carried here by ocean currents over hundreds of thousands of years. Without bedrock to anchor it, the terrain is easily sculpted by storms and tides. Roads are little more than compacted sand tracks, and heavy rain can wash them out overnight. Inland, freshwater lakes rest atop layers of compact sand called coffee rock, filtering the water to crystal clarity. They look like the safest swimming spots on the island, but even here, the environment is alive with its own delicate balance. For the Bachula people, the island's traditional custodians, Fraser is more than just a place. It is a living entity with its own rhythms and rules. Their knowledge of its dangers has been passed down for countless generations, rooted in observation of the island's animals, tides, and weather. Today, their warnings echo in modern signs and ranger briefings. Swim only in designated areas, avoid certain waters in jellyfish season, and keep a respectful distance from the dingoes. Yet even with clear rules and constant reminders, the combination of stunning scenery and hidden dangers continues to lure visitors. Many arrive expecting a postcard-perfect holiday and leave with a deeper respect for how quickly nature can turn. From the shimmer of a jellyfish's bell in the sunlight to the sudden shadow of a shark beneath a wave, from the amber flash of a dingo's gaze to the soft collapse of sand underfoot, Fraser Island reminds every traveler that beauty and peril often share the same space. And just as the rainforest here meets the dunes in a seamless blend, the next journey into danger takes us from sandy shores to the deep, ancient waters of a place where beauty hides in the darkest depths. In the frozen heart of Siberia, surrounded by mountain ranges and dense taiga, lies a body of water unlike any other on Earth, Lake Baikal. In winter, its surface becomes a sheet of glassy ice that stretches to the horizon, etched with cracks and frozen bubbles that seem to suspend time itself. In summer, it transforms into a vast expanse of shimmering blue, framed by green hills and snow-capped peaks. But beneath its beauty lies a world that is deeper, older, and stranger than most people can imagine. Lake Baikal is the deepest freshwater lake in the world, plunging more than 5,000 feet at its lowest point. That depth means it holds around 1/5 of all the unfrozen freshwater on Earth, more than the entire volume of the Great Lakes combined. Scientists believe the lake formed more than 25 million years ago, making it not just the deepest, but also the oldest lake on the planet. Its waters are so clear that on a calm day you can see down more than 100 feet, a clarity made possible by microscopic organisms that constantly filter the water. The lake is also a living museum of evolution. Over half of the species found here exist nowhere else, from the Baikal seal, the only freshwater seal in the world, to transparent fish with bodies so delicate they seem to vanish in the light. Yet alongside its rare biology, Lake Baikal has a history of mysteries that science still struggles to explain. Over the years, divers have reported strange phenomena beneath its surface. Some tell of glowing orbs drifting in the dark water, moving in deliberate, almost intelligent ways. Others speak of vast pulsating lights that seem to come from deep below, too far for sunlight to reach. The most startling accounts come from a Soviet military diving team in the 1980s. While training in the lake's depths, they claimed to have encountered large, humanoid-shaped figures wearing what looked like silvery suits. The beings, they said, were far larger than humans and moved effortlessly through the water without breathing equipment. Attempts to approach them reportedly ended with a powerful force pushing the divers away. Skeptics argue these stories could be explained by disorientation, light refraction, or even hallucinations brought on by the extreme conditions underwater. But in Baikal, local legends have long spoken of spirits and guardians beneath the waves' tails that seem to echo the modern reports in uncanny ways. Whether folklore or something undiscovered, the stories linger because Baikal is one of those places where the line between science and myth seems thinner than usual. Beyond the mysteries, there are dangers here that are entirely within the realm of science and just as unnerving. Beneath the lake bed lies a massive reserve of methane gas, trapped for millennia under layers of sediment. Methane naturally forms when organic matter decays without oxygen, and over millions of years, Baikal's unique geology has allowed vast quantities to accumulate. If a sudden geological shift or temperature change were to destabilize these deposits, the gas could erupt violently into the atmosphere. Such an event would not just release a huge burst of flammable gas, which could ignite in the presence of lightning or a spark, but it could also displace oxygen in the surrounding air. In a confined area, that would be enough to suffocate life in minutes. Scientists sometimes compare the risk to the disaster at Lake Nyos in Cameroon, where a sudden release of carbon dioxide killed thousands. While no event of that scale has been recorded at Baikal in modern times, researchers monitor it closely, especially as climate change warms the surrounding region and alters the lake's chemistry. Even without a catastrophic methane release, the lake's vast size and location create unique conditions for sudden, violent storms. Winds can rise without warning, whipping the surface into towering waves that threaten even experienced boaters. In winter, cracks can appear overnight in the ice, some stretching for miles, producing deep, booming sounds as if the lake itself is groaning. For the people who live around Baikal, these sounds are a familiar reminder that the lake is alive in ways both literal and geological. Every scientific expedition here seems to uncover more layers of complexity, from microbial life that thrives in near-freezing water to chemical signatures in the sediment that hold clues to ancient climate patterns. Yet for all that science can explain, Baikal still holds its secrets close, waiting in the silent cold depths where the world's oldest water rests undisturbed. And just as its surface shifts with the seasons, the journey into the next place of mystery moves from the icy heart of Siberia to lands shaped by fire and destruction. On the small Caribbean island of Montserrat, the green hills and turquoise waters hide a scar that is impossible to ignore. It begins with a mountain Soufriere Hills volcano, a seemingly quiet peak that, for centuries, slept beneath a lush canopy. That stillness ended suddenly in the summer of 1995. Without warning, the volcano stirred back to life. At first, it was only a thin column of steam and ash curling into the sky, a sign that something deep underground had shifted. But within months, the activity escalated into a full eruption, sending towering plumes of ash into the air and pouring scorching pyroclastic flows down the slopes. Pyroclastic flows are among the most dangerous volcanic phenomena on Earth. They are not slow-moving rivers of lava, but surges of superheated gas, ash, and rock that race downhill at hurricane speeds, often hotter than 500 degrees Celsius. When they rolled through Montserrat's valleys, They consumed everything in their path: vegetation, buildings, and roads, leaving behind a lifeless gray wasteland. The island's capital, Plymouth, sat directly in their path. Plymouth had been a vibrant port town with colorful buildings, bustling markets, and a harbor that welcomed ships from around the world. But when the volcano's fury reached it, the city vanished beneath layers of ash and volcanic debris. Entire neighborhoods were buried so deep that only the upper stories of some buildings remain visible, sticking up like broken teeth from the hardened ash. Streets that once carried traffic now disappear into mounds of volcanic rock. The government was forced to evacuate the city permanently, and Plymouth became a modern-day Pompeii, frozen in time, but still dangerous to approach. The eruption split the island in two, not just geographically, but socially. The southern half, where the volcano dominates the landscape, was declared an exclusion zone. More than half of Montserrat's population was forced to leave, many resettling abroad or moving to the northern end of the island. Those who stayed learned to live with a constant, uneasy awareness of the volcano's moods. Scientists set up monitoring stations to track its tremors, gas emissions, and dome growth, knowing that any sign of renewed activity could mean another evacuation. Volcanoes like Soufriere Hills are shaped by the movement of Earth's crust. Montserrat sits on the boundary between tectonic plates, where one plate is slowly sliding beneath another, a process called subduction. As the sinking plate descends, it melts, generating magma that rises toward the surface. In the case of Soufriere Hills, this magma is thick and sticky, trapping gases inside until the pressure becomes too great. When it finally escapes, the result is an explosive eruption rather than a gentle lava flow. The environmental impact has been as dramatic as the human one. Ash from the eruption changed the chemistry of the soil, in some places making it richer and in others smothering plant life entirely. Rivers and streams became choked with volcanic debris, altering their flow and sometimes causing sudden floods. The coastline near Plymouth expanded as pyroclastic flows and lahars mudflows of volcanic material pushed the shoreline outward into the sea, creating new land that is too unstable for safe use. Despite the destruction, life has adapted around the danger. Plants have begun to reclaim parts of the exclusion zone, sprouting in cracks between cooled lava and ash. Birds nest in the new cliffs created by the flows, and hardy pioneer species of trees push roots into the loose volcanic soil. From a distance, it can be hard to tell that the green slopes hide a lethal history. Yet the monitoring data tells another story. The volcano is still active, its dome occasionally swelling and releasing small plumes, a reminder that its rest could end at any moment. Entry into the exclusion zone is strictly controlled, with permits granted mainly to scientists studying the volcano and to maintenance crews servicing the monitoring equipment. The danger is not just the possibility of another eruption, but also the unstable ground, sudden rockfalls, and the lingering heat beneath the surface. Visitors who stand on the edge of the zone can look down into a landscape that feels both ancient and eerily recent. The remnants of homes, the twisted metal of vehicles, and the ghostly outlines of streets vanishing into gray. And from here, where molten rock reshaped a nation, the path of this journey turns toward another place where the forces of nature hide their power in plain sight, a place where mystery and danger meet in the open ocean. From the moment we began this journey, we've traveled far beyond the familiar waters of the Bermuda Triangle, venturing into places that are even more dangerous, more unpredictable, and in some ways, more mysterious. Each location we've explored is more than just a point on a map. It's a place where science meets uncertainty, where natural forces collide in ways that defy easy explanation, and where survival depends on respecting the environment's raw power. We've seen lakes that can suffocate entire villages without warning, islands swarming with creatures whose venom can end a life in minutes, and valleys where magnetic fields seem to twist our most reliable instruments into chaos. Some of these places are shaped by Earth's shifting crust volcanoes, earthquakes, and tectonic pressures that can transform landscapes in an instant. Others are ruled by the deep oceans, where extreme pressures, alien-like life forms, and the constant threat of the unknown make every dive a calculated risk. And then there are locations where the danger hides in the air itself, toxins, invisible gases, and even radiation so intense that a single breath or a few moments' exposure could be fatal. What makes these sites so striking is not just their danger, but the way they remind us that our planet still holds secrets we haven't fully uncovered. Science can explain much the chemistry of poisonous lakes, the physics behind rogue waves, the biology of predators, but there are still gaps in our understanding. In some of these places, events occur that we can't yet predict with certainty, patterns that hint at deeper processes we're only beginning to grasp. It's a reminder that, even in the modern age, Earth is not entirely mapped in terms of its risks. Yet, these aren't just cautionary tales. They are also stories of resilience, curiosity, and the human drive to explore. Researchers risk their safety to study these environments up close, collecting data that could one day save lives. Local communities adapt to conditions that would overwhelm outsiders, carrying traditions, warnings, and knowledge passed down over generations. Wildlife continues to survive, even thrive in habitats that test the limits of adaptation. When we look at these locations together, side by side, it becomes clear that the Bermuda Triangle, as famous as it is just one small chapter in a much bigger story. There are corners of the Earth where the survival odds are lower, where the forces at play are stronger, and where the margin for error is almost non-existent. These are places where respect for nature isn't just wise, it's the only path to survival. Now I'd like to hear from you. Out of all the places we've explored tonight, which one left you feeling the most uneasy? Was it the silent, suffocating danger of a toxic lake? The shadowy depths of a trench where light has never reached? The unpredictable rage of a volcano that could awaken at any time? Or perhaps it was something else entirely, a place where the mystery itself is what unsettled you most. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's see which of these deadly wonders our community finds most haunting. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like this video. It helps others discover these stories and keeps our explorations going. Subscribe to join us for more deep dives into the most fascinating and mysterious places on Earth, and tap the bell so you never miss the next adventure. There are countless more stories waiting out there in deserts, in rainforests, under the ice, and far below the waves. And together, we'll keep uncovering them, one mystery at a time.